Hey, BassGeek here, and today we're going to be talking about the bigger swim baits that I like to throw during the springtime. All right, so I've got a system that I use most of the time when I'm throwing the bigger swim baits. Now, when I talk about bigger swim baits, they can be some of the soft ones, but we're talking about generally either the hard swim baits, you know, 5-6 inches, you know, to your Hoodies. This is one of your 168s. I've got the 9 inchers, but I've lost my Trout 9 incher. But anyway, so for me, when it comes to the spring, I keep it pretty simple. Now, early on in the spring, up until mid-spring, really when those bass, you know, when we get that first warm up, those bass may not have moved up shallow. They're still, you know, either on those main lake points or they've just moved, you know, to those maybe first points in or first humps or whatever it may be that they're staging on. A lot of times those largemouth, I love to throw these big, and this is a Bass Munition 7-inch. This is a trout color. And that tail, because a lot of times the water is going to be, you know, it's still going to be cold. And I mean, you can see how soft that is, because a lot of times what I'm going to do is I'm going to put an ounce and a quarter, an ounce and a 3/8 ledge head on this, and I'm going to throw it out there and I'm going to slow roll it on the bottom. And it's really got to have a super soft tail. And you can tell, no pun intended, I mean, look at that. That thing is big around than a quarter. So when you cast it out there and you find that group of fish on that point, and again, deep is relative, you know, they could be 50 feet or 35 feet in my lake, and they could be 10 or 12 in your lake. But what's going to happen is you're going to put a heavy weight so it stays in bottom contact, and you're going to fish that trout very slowly. Kind of the same way that you fish your Hoodies. Now again, during this early spring, I like, you know, maybe this size for my big smallmouth. But again, you can see, look at the tail on both of those. You want a super soft swim bait this time of year. You know, again, from the first of spring till about your middle, but right as they really begin to move into those creeks or move up shallow. And you're going to drag these bad boys on the bottom. And these are the types of baits that I like. Now, I've got a Savage Gear also. I think it's a 7-inch in the trout. I really like it too. I don't have it with me. We're out on, you'll see this video probably next Wednesday, Top Secret Lake K. You'll be really interested to learn about this little lake. All right, so now as we get into a real warm up like it is today, so we've really got our first heat wave that's coming in. So the water temps have jumped from those, you know, 49 to 51 to that 55. Even today they were 57 when we first got on the water this morning. And I'm telling you, that's when they'll really begin to push up shallow. And when they begin to push up shallow, that's when, you know, they can be very active, but they can still not be, you know, post-spawn active. And what I mean by that is they're not fully committing to chasing. They're ambushing. Smallmouth aside, you know, smallmouth will absolutely chase, but that's the time I like to begin to start throwing my glide baits. So, you know, here's a bait. I'm really happy with the action of this bait. I'm not really happy with the paint job. You guys can go back and see kind of the, and I swear I didn't beat it to death today. So, you know, you can go back and see in the companies that I bought this from, and one of the expos. But you know, I mean, the paint is just coming right off. It was a beautiful paint job. And you know, I'm in a lake where there's no shad, so there's a lot of bluegill. They're gonna feed on a lot of panfish, but that is a beautiful, beautiful bait for that sort of thing. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna have somebody else kind of touch that up for me. Now the other glides, you know, of course, it's hard to get away from bone, from the light trout, you know, the S-wavers. And of course, if I'm fishing for largemouth, I tend to want the bigger S-wavers. Now that S-waver right there, I think is a, I don't know, a 7-inch. That's a 168. So that's probably like a 7 to a 9. Now it's got a crank wrap on it in a trout color. There's no trout in this lake, but guys, that's a great color. And I actually had a couple of hits on that. Now, as we get in to, you know, the bass begin to move into that middle of the creek, last half of the creek or last third of the creek, you know, the S-wavers still work good, but what'll end up happening is you'll really begin to see the bull shad work. And for me, the bull shad tends to really begin to shine in the post spawn. This bait, when they have kind of got over their, you know, their hump, they've kind of went out, fed a little, and now they're in full on feeding mode. This bait right here is fire. And last year I went out and threw it. I couldn't get them to commit, but I think it was because of the reel speed. This year I picked up the Super Duty, and this is a new rod that I'm using for my heavy swim baits. This is a Diawa, it's a DXSB swim bait, I guess a DX series. But I threw this all day today, never had any followers. But that 9-inch bull shad and that 9-inch bull shad and that pearl, man, it is like a fish finder. So once you get into the post spawn, that's a great bait to use. I will use it in some smaller sizes, especially if I begin to get them pulling up and chasing that 9-inch. I'll go ahead and pull out. This is a shad color. I'll pull out that. Now the key to those guys, you're not fishing them slow. You're not fishing them like you would your glide baits. You're not twitching them to get them to come up and bite them. You're burning them. You're fishing for active fish. And you'll know because a lot of times you can throw this and every fish down that bank is going to come up chasing it all the way to the boat. But you can go to this or this and they won't touch it. So sometimes, and that was the biggest reason I changed. I had another reel on here and it was only a 5. And last year when that bite turned on for me at one of my lakes that I like to fish a lot, it really, I couldn't reel it fast enough. I mean, they wanted it burnt. And so I went ahead and moved up to this Lew's Super Duty. It is a 6.4 to 1 and cast a mile. Now, another bait all the way up through the spawn. So middle of spring to spawn is the Ganarelle. Now you can, this is the full-size Ganarelle. The babies are awesome, especially once they get up on the bed. Especially once they start spawning. This one right here, once we get into the post spawn, a lot of times if you can twitch this erratically, really use it almost like a jerk bait. When they're up on the bed, you get around a lot of bluegill beds, that bait right there is going to absolutely crush. Now, I'll say this, bull shad also makes a bull gill. Now I have not tried the bull gill, but for me, generally, I like a bull shad that's painted more like a bull gill. Now, again, I'm not really talking about you know, the standard swim baits that you see me throw. This is my progression. So literally for me, early spring, as long as I can find them out, let's say 12 feet deep, 10 feet deep, and they're out on those points, these are the things I'm going to go with. Slow rolled. We're still talking about water temps, maybe they're moving up, but they're in that mid 40s to low 50, 45, 51, 52. Once we get there and they start moving back, that's when I start going with my glide baits. Once they're really, you know, committed to being shallow, committed to feeding, you know, they're really on those secondary points, they're really moving into those secondary points that and humps that are midway into the creek to the backs of the creeks, that's when I'm going to go with, well, first I'm going to tear my carpet up, but that's when I'm going to go with my glide baits. And like I said, you know, that's when I really like my S-wavers. You know, I'm not a hard swim bait expert, but you know, this seems to be what has worked for me over the past 2 to 3 years. Now, I'm going to use those glide baits all the way up until they're on the beds. Now, once they pull off the beds, I'll still use my glide baits just for a little bit, just until, because what a lot of times they'll do, the big fish will pull off those beds. So once that first group get up there and spawn, they kind of get out on those secondary points, you know, backs of the creeks, halfway out to, you know, the first third, and they'll suspend. And those glide baits are awesome when they do that over those points. Find your balls of shad. Trust me on this. Your balls of shad will be 10 foot, and they could be over 40 foot of water in certain lakes. And these bad boys right here, it's worked real slow. They don't want a lot of noise. They don't want a lot of action. They just want something that's slowly coming by so they can reach out and grab it. And that's a steak coming by them. After that, once they get that 1 or 2 meal and they really begin to feed up, they go on a feeding frenzy. You know, after they pull off the beds, they really do go on a feeding frenzy as they're making their way back out to deep water, because that's what they're doing. They're feeding up for that summer. And then that's when I like to go to the multi-joints, and I like to fish them as fast as you can fish them. And I'll tell you, the 9-inch, it's the only one I toss. It really is. I'm actually going to buy me another one of these and have it painted in gizzard shad, because sometimes, well, last year again, I was having issues. I don't know if it was really the speed or the color, but I don't have a 9-inch right now in the gizzard shad that he paints. But I'm going to buy me another 9-inch, and I'm going to have it painted in gizzard shad for me. And guys, that's really it. You know, I mean, there are times, you know, when the bluegill are up on the bed, your small hard bodies will work great. But you know, once we get into that post spawn and they move out on those ledges, that's when I tend to really start going to my, you know, Bass Munitions, you know, Patriot minnows and that sort of stuff. My soft, you know, 7-inch kind of versions of these, or not 7, but my 5-inch version of these. And that's what I throw when I get out in the deeper water. All right, guys, I hope this helps you with some stuff. I hope it tells you, you know, when to maybe pick up each type of bait and throw it throughout the spring. Like I said, this is what's worked for me the past 2-3 years. All right, as always, guys, if you got any questions or comments about the setups that I use, go ahead and ask them. I'll let you know. Like I said, I've got 2 here. Both of them are Lew's Super Duty. This is one that I actually use as a big A-rig too, but they're both 6.4 to 1s, and generally I'm throwing 20-pound fluorocarbon on them. Now, if you're just starting to fish these big swim baits, I would definitely suggest you use mono, because it's a little more forgiving. Don't use braid if you're just learning, because you will snap it off and you'll lose your bait. Anyway, questions, comments in the comment section below. You guys know I love to talk about fishing, And I love swim baits, so I know you guys know that too. So if you got any questions, give me a yell. Like it if you like it. Don't forget to subscribe. Make sure you guys ring that bell so you get the notifications when these videos come out. And as always, you guys rock. All right, guys, it is time to pick the winner of the Spinnerbait Mystery Tackle Box Pro. All right, you can see here is the video. Let's copy that. Here we are on the random comment picker. Paste it in. Get those comments. 233 unique commenters. I appreciate the heck out of you guys. Now, let's see who won. All right, Chad Smith, you commented #spinnerbait. Thanks for the opportunity to win. Great stuff. What's your favorite brand of spinnerbaits? My favorite brand of spinnerbaits, I've got several. You know, if I had to do a couple of go-tos, you know, the War Eagles are great. The Strike Kings, I really like their, I can't remember the deep version. Love that bluegill color that they have. Love the Mini-Me's by Spot Sticker. There's a ton of great out there. The huge ones by Ledge Hog. Those huge big bass spinnerbaits. Those things are absolutely awesome. But anyway, Chad Smith, congratulations, brother. Send me an email. BassGeek.biteme@gmail.com. I'll get your address and I'll ship it out to you.